Okay, we're good. Awesome. Okay, hello everybody. Good evening. Thank you for joining us on this fine Tuesday evening. Yes, my name is X and I'm the environmental justice organizer, but I will hand it over to Amy Goldsmith, our state director, to give a little bit more context for today.
Yeah,
Or me.
thank you, X. Thank you, X. So as X said, she's our New Jersey environmental justice organizer, and you'll meet other people on our team. Talani Taylor, who is our zero emission warehouse organizer, and Talani. And is Kelly joining us too? So I just want to let you know that World Asthma Day is a day where we recognize the health issues of asthma and how we need to protect ourselves. And we have a wonderful guest with us who can talk about the medical issues, but we also have to recognize that the reason why 1 in 4 kids in Newark and cities like Newark have asthma is because of the environmental degradation, meaning dirty air, poor housing stock, and other things that contribute to the problems of asthma that put us into the hospital, emergency rooms, high cost of medical care. And so one of the best ways to prevent harm and asthma is to get clean air, and in the workplace, at schools, where you pray, in your communities. So I want to turn the program back over to X, and another person who will be speaking is Kim Gaddy, our New Jersey and National Environmental Justice Director. And why don't you take it away?
Yes, thank you for that awesome introduction, Amy. Yeah, so what I basically do is more so the justice side of things. I learn about the environment a lot, but the framework that Clean Water and kind of I operate off of is something like what the NAACP has as one of their resolutions. So this is a quote from their resolution for last year. Environmental injustice, including the proliferation of climate change, systematically impacts communities of color and low-income communities in the US and around the world, right? And that's backed up by a lot of evidence that has been collected over the years. So, for example, in 2020, nearly 70% of Black people shared that they still live, near environmental exposures as opposed to 40% of white people. And in at least 19 states, Black people are 79% more likely to live near pollution. So these are, facts not only collected by scientists, et cetera, but also collected by the NAACP themselves. They have a whole chapter around environmental justice issues, and I'm also the co-chair of the Newark NAACP Environmental Justice Committee. So yeah, Black and Brown communities are often considered sacrifice zones or zones for soil contamination, disposal, and air and water quality issues. And these are kind of the reasons why the health problems in our communities exist. It's no, I guess, no surprise and no coincidence that our air is bad, our air quality is poor, we have water quality issues, and our Black and Brown communities are getting sick at higher and higher rates. So yeah, race more than class is the primary indicator for the placement of toxic facilities, and that contributes to problems like asthma, heart disease, lung disease, etc. And that's what we're basically here today to talk about the connections of asthma and the environment to, larger social issues that we have. So yeah, that's my spiel. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our lovely speaker, Dr. Savary. So Dr. Savary has been interested in pediatric pulmonology, specifically pediatric asthma since college. He's primarily interested in helping bridge the medical teaching and practical treatment options within patients, families, and the medical system. His research has focused on predictors of asthma, often where it disproportionately affects communities. He believes that the key to patient care is a partnership between the patient and the physician, which he strives to deliver. Dr. Savary is an assistant professor at NJMS and has two practice locations, one at University Hospital and the other one at Newark Beth Israel. He completed college at Columbia University, medical school at SUNY Stony Brook, residency at Jacob Einstein Hospital and in the Bronx, and pediatric pulmonology fellowship at Columbia Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital. He's been a part of Rutgers NJMS since 2017. Awesome. Yes. And
And
Kim
I still
Gaddy.
look like that picture.
Yes, just like that picture, bow tie and all. Yes. So also we'll be having Kim Gaddy, the National Environmental Justice Director for Clean Water Speak. She's been advocating for communities impacted by industrial pollution and the goods movement system in Newark across the country for 23 years. Kim develops and implements clean water action / clean water funds, grassroots environmental justice campaigns, and coalition building efforts nationally and in New Jersey. Also, she is the founder of the Southward Environmental Alliance. Kim, anything to add?
I don't look like that picture. No, sorry.
No, your hair just got longer. That's it. You look good. Okay. So, Dr. Savary, I can hand it over to you. I'm gonna start sharing your presentation. And yeah, you can start whenever.
All right, great. Well, I hope that everyone's having a fantastic World Asthma Day. It's warm outside, the pollens are popping, and hopefully you've taken your allergy medicines. What we're going to do is talk about understanding asthma triggers, some management tricks that we can do to help make it a little bit easier to live with asthma, and also we'll talk about the impact of the environment has. Let's go to the next slide, please. And so to understand how air gets from the atmosphere to your blood, you need science, right? So specifically physics to move fluid from the air down to the lungs. That's what we call this air as a fluid. To understand how much you breathe, you need math. To understand what you breathe, you need chemistry. To understand what impacts your daily life, you need experience. And to do what's right, you need heart. This is a normal airway. Most people have an airway that looks like this. It's got no mucus, no swelling, no congestion. You can run, you can play, you can sleep well. You get a cold and it doesn't really impact you all that much. You feel pretty good just in general, living your best life. But on the next slide, we'll see that triggers are all around you. Either they are at home, where you've got pets or roaches or mice or mold. They can be anywhere you spend time, at grandma's house or on the way to school. If you have a babysitter who maybe smokes or have exposure to smoke, you also can have increasing and worsening air quality as time goes on. And if you have asthma, that increased risk will make trouble. That kind of trouble we'll see on the next slide, where it mixes with your genetics. So on one side, we see triggers, again, the smoke, roach, exhaust, mice, plus how much time you've been on the planet, and how much your genetic risk factors for these processes add to your story, makes it so that you get airway inflammation. If you have a family history of asthma or allergies or eczema, if you have allergy yourself to foods or to trees or grasses, and you get exposed to different things, you can raise a higher, stronger response, which will lead to more mucus and more swelling. And that's what we see on the bottom of the slide. We now have a lot more swelling, a lot more airway edema, we call that, and less space for air to move, right? When you have less space for that air to move, it's going to make your lungs not happy. And so we'll see on the next slide how the differences move from one to the next, from normal to an asthma airway without an attack to an asthma airway during an attack, where the swelling gets progressively worse, where the muscles around the airway start tightening as the body is trying to get rid of the mucus and the congestion. This might be triggered by, again, some of those things that we looked at earlier. Either it's allergies like dogs and molds and flowers, but it could also be a respiratory illness. There are many different reasons why you can have asthma, and that's one of the pieces that I help teach my patients, is that there are many different reasons, including exercise or allergy or infection or smoke exposure or obesity or diet, right? All of these pieces can impact how much you make inflammation and how bad that inflammation can get during an asthma attack. When you talk about asthma, we always talk about the medicines that you can use, right? This is a picture from a 2017 poster. As you can see on the top, it has a bunch of albuterols. These are the short-acting beta-2 agonists, bronchodilators. Albuterol can be called ProAir or Proventil or Ventolin. There are inhaled corticosteroids, which are in orange underneath it. Again, some of the more common ones are Flovent or Qvar or Asmanex. And then the combination medicines are a little bit under that, where those are the Advairs and the Symbicorts and the Airduos. The other medications that you see that I haven't called attention to, the long-acting betas, the muscarinic antagonists, these are used more in adults than they are in kids because of, again, different reasons why you have asthma. In adults, we also have to contend with smoking history, work exposure, exposure to different pathways of inflammation, which can be worse over time, and which these medications can try and address. And in some patients, even on the bottom in purple, you'll see these are asthma shots, shots that we can give for patients to help control that inflammation. On the side, I have two pictures of budesonide, which is another medication which we use often in kids, and albuterol. These are in the nebulizer form, as opposed to the metered dose inhaler, the pump form. Now I want, X, if you could advance the slide. This is the 2020 version. If you have got great photographic memory, you realize that there are a whole lot more pumps on this picture than there were on the last slide. So in the 3 years, there have already been a jump from 2017 to 2020. From 2020 to 2024, we again have a much larger jump. There are many more pumps available. Wait, not yet. Go back.
Sorry, I thought it was on the next slide. Hold on.
No.
This one?
Yes, that one.
Okay. Awesome.
Slide 8. There it is. Okay.
All right, I'm in this meeting now.
And so you'll see that there are more short-acting albuterol types. There are different ways of using your inhaled steroids. Now it's not only about pumps and sprays and powders, but there's also Bluetooth-enabled apps. We have more combination medications. We've got a lot more biologics, those severe persistent asthma shots, right? The game is changing quickly. We are trying to recognize that there are different reasons why you have inflammation, and so each person should have a different medication. But the bottom line always ends up being albuterol when there's trouble, and controller medicine when you need to help make that inflammation calmer. Now the next slide. All right, now which one's this one? Is that the same one? One more slide. Are those the same thing?
No.
No. But close your eyes, pretend it's 4 o'clock in the morning, your kid is coughing, and you've been doing this for the last 2 days. They look really similar. And so part of what I try and do is to help people understand the differences between their medications, to help understand their action plans so well that even in the middle of the night, when you're just like, oh, what happened? What's that noise? And you hear your kid just coughing in your ear, what can you do and what's the right medicine to take? A lot of times we'll have patients who are confused about how to take their pumps or which pump to take when. I've had people tell me that the albuterol is the every day and the Flovent is the as needed. I've had people telling me that they're both as needed and nothing is every day, right? It all depends on what your plan is supposed to be. Can you advance again one slide? When I talk about a squinted picture, what's this pump? You can't know, almost you can't know, because you don't see the mouthpiece. So X, could you advance it one more, please? The same company makes these two pumps, and they use the same blue casing. The only difference is the medicine that goes inside and the cap, which one is pink, the other is green, right? And so you really have to work on understanding what is going on in the medications that you're using and how you use them. Next slide, please. This is one of my favorite shows from Scrub. The quote is, it's actually pronounced analgesic, not analgesic. The pills go in your mouth. So how you take the medicine is really important. Next slide, please. These medications are for rescue. These are not medications that you use on a regular basis. If you are using them on a regular basis, I'm worried that you have way too much inflammation. Currently, these are the albuterols that are on the market that you can go get from your pharmacy. You'll notice that there's a white one, a yellow one, a blue one, a red one, a purple one, right? There are a lot of those colors in the controller market as well. So you really want to look at the name. See how it says Ventolin and then in parentheses albuterol sulfate? That's what you want to make sure you pay attention to. The name on the inside. They all say albuterol with some extra words attached. Next slide, please. When you take your albuterol, when you take your metered dose inhaler, I always recommend using a chamber. These are pictures of some of the chambers that are out there in the world, but there are many more types. What the purpose of the chamber is to slow down the medicine so it can get breathed in deep into your lungs. The chambers can have a mouthpiece, which there's no mask, so you can just take a big deep breath. And there's some chambers where there's a mask that covers your nose and your mouth. Now, you may be aware of this, but if you cover your nose and your mouth, you're going to breathe everything that is in front of your nose and your mouth. And so when you've got a kid who needs to take a pump, using a chamber with a mask is a really great way to ensure that they breathe in that medicine. A lot of times people will say, I'm worried my kid is not getting the medicine. If you cover their nose and their mouth, they're going to get the medicine. They can scream or they can be sitting there watching Paw Patrol. Whatever it is that they're doing, they're breathing, right? When you're using the chamber without a mask, you have to make sure you're breathing through your mouth, not your nose. Because if you breathe through your nose, the medicine is at your mouth and you're not going to get the medicine. On the next slide, you'll see a picture of what it looks like when you take a pump with a chamber versus not. When you use the pump with no chamber, most of that pump is sprayed and it crashes right into your tongue and the back of your throat. Even if you coordinate and take a slow, deep breath as you pump, most of that medicine is not going into your lungs. If you use a spacer, almost all of that medicine goes into your lungs because it is slowed down and able to get in there. Now, you'll have many different companies tell you you don't need to use a spacer with our product because of this, that, or the other, right? But in a purely physics way, in a scientific way, the best way to get the medicine that is sprayed at you is to slow it down so it could get deeper into your lungs. And when we're talking about controlling the inflammation that is deep in your lungs, that's where you want the medicine to be. So we spoke a little bit about kind of the medications and the purposes, and we talked about exposures, but where we're exposed is also a really important piece to consider. We'll often talk about being exposed at home, right? What's in the home environment? Where is this child spending most of their time? In the early childhood settings before age 5, you are mostly at home, or maybe you're at your babysitter's, or you're at grandparents, or if you've got a split household with a mother in one location and a father in another location, a grandparent and a parent in a different location, you've got many houses to consider. But also when you enter school, now we have to start thinking about the school space itself. Where do you spend time after school? If you go to church or other events or activities, what is that like? Especially when we're talking about Newark, we're talking about a city that is historic, that has been around for more than 100 years. Our infrastructure has been around for more than 100 years. The flood lines and the floodplains have all been there for more than 100 years. When you start thinking about what X is very familiar with, right? The historical basis of the buildings that were existing there, right? How much known exposure is at one specific location, and how can that impact the surrounding locations? That's really important to consider, right? So now we're going to talk a little bit about schools specifically. And if you can think of any other places and things that could happen at school where you can be exposed, I would love to hear, because I love expanding this list. Right when you're entering school, you can get exposed to fire or smog or emissions, right, as you're just walking to school. Depending on the weather or the location, right? In the West Coast, there are a lot more environmental fires, wildfires happening. But we know that smoke from Canada can rain down on Newark any day. Getting exposed to cleaning products, not only from your home, but in the hallway or on the bus or entering the school, just as you walk into the doors. Then there's scents all around you. You can have candles or plug-in fragrances or fresheners, incenses, anything that is burned can be an insult to an asthma airway. In the classroom, you can have irritants like carpets, curtains, or blinds. Kindergarten classrooms love having carpets so you can sit and have circle time. That carpet, if it's installed wall to wall, might have mold or an underlayer, which is much older, which can house dust mites or can house roach or mouse excrement. Other considerations are heating and cooling. In some places, it's hot, it's cold. It's hot and it's cold again, and turning on and off those systems creates a startup of emission. Maintaining those systems also creates a lot of emissions. Converting from cooling, which is air conditioning, freon, air-based, to heating, if your heating is coal, oil, or fracked gas powered, then you're going to have to consider, what do you do with those emissions, and are they vented appropriately to not expose students in the school? Also, don't forget about decorations in the winter, in the fall, seasonal projects, wreaths, trees, decorations, all these beautiful things that our children make and love to share with us. They can sometimes be allergies. My son loves bringing me home these leaf concoctions that he's made. He's gone and foraged leaves to go make this thing, and he's got leaves all up in his hair. I'm just like, dude, you've got asthma. Get out of here. What are you doing? You have to make sure that you try and kind of allow them to grow, but at the same time, kind of protect them. It's a real challenge. And lastly, there are also environmental exposures which can occur, including exposures from pools, if there are pools in the school, construction or demolition. This is a whole different conversation, but we talked about how Newark is old. Most of the schools in the United States are old, all built before the 1960s. Most of them have had a renovation in the last maybe 15 years. I know during COVID, there were a lot of people who were focusing on improving HVAC systems. That means that they were releasing asbestos and lead and all these other pieces that they were trying to help protect children from. Any other? Nikki adds glue, temperature in the space, right? Thermal regulation is also really important. We talked about heating and cooling, but also making sure it's even, right? You can't have people learning in places where it's drastically hot or cold. A lot of craft supplies, and not just glue, but also markers, permanent markers. And now we're going to be talking about like art rooms or mechanic shop rooms, any place that has a kitchen, maybe if you have like a home ec cooking class, then you have to have appropriate ventilation for that stove and that range that's making that heat for people to practice their cooking skills. So the next slide is don't get comfortable. This is kind of a call to people who have already had experience with asthma. There are some parents who have never dealt with asthma and they're terrified at the get-go. There are some parents who have another kid who's got some asthma, and there are still some other parents who have had asthma as a child themselves. Their siblings have had asthma. They know asthma. They got this, right? Everyone's asthma is a little bit different. How yours was is not how your child's will be. In the 1900s, people used to get sent to the country for better air. I remember when I had asthma attacks, I was told, go get some fresh air, go run a lap, right? Take a deep breath. Uh, Fast forward to now, the earth is hotter, the winter is milder, and that means that the spring is sooner, the pollen blooms are bigger, uh, and stronger and longer. Allergies are on the rise. Every year it seems like someone's saying this is the worst allergy season yet. But if you keep saying that every year, I don't know how much I believe you. Um, our kids are facing a world which is different than the one that we faced when we had our own asthma. More pollution, more floods, more mold risk. Try to look at asthma with fresh eyes. So I want to put a lyrical quote in here, right? Time keeps on slipping into the future. We don't have the ability to put the brakes on. We can only try and change things as we move forward and slowly make these changes. What do you think you can do to help identify triggers around you? Well, you can kind of know what you have to do. Know how you get exposed. Is it by walking, or is it when you're just sitting? Is it happening when you're playing? Is your playground near 280? Is it near the parkway or the turnpike? Is it near Route 21? Are you getting exposed to a lot of environmental insults? Ask your school about anything that you're concerned about. Maybe there are fragrance policies or other ways to reduce the indoor air quality insults. There are some schools which follow voluntary stances on reducing fragrance and improving air quality. You can always ask the principal or the school nurse if you have any questions. You can also speak to your landlord or the building maintenance crew if you've got a concern about a specific location. If you see peeling paint and mold on a windowsill or on a ceiling tile, you can ask about, hey, has that been investigated? And what is the status on that? Like, are we working on that? And maybe someone will tell you the truthful answer. We don't have the funds to fix it. And that's when you can try and find independent resources who can do inspections and report on findings. I saw Nikki in the chat, right? She's a good person to chat with. The state sometimes has resources to help reduce the cost of remediation, and the state can also levy fines for a lack of compliance with its regulations. And don't forget that improving the conditions for your child improves the conditions for everybody. We're almost done on our last two slides. I've kind of got what you should look out for, right? If your kid or you ever needs albuterol more than every 4 hours, or if you've been using albuterol every 4 hours for many days, 2 days, or if they're breathing too hard or too fast and you're worried, get help. You should not be using albuterol every hour for 5 days while you're just kind of hoping that it's going to get better. Those are the worst events that I have run into, and I would prefer if they did not happen anymore. If you ever need help, call your physician, go to an urgent care, go to the emergency room.
Oh, Jesus.
Please just don't keep doing albuterol. And the last slide is when you should call somebody like me. If you have at least 2 or more oral steroid courses in a year, right, going to the emergency room, getting prednisone, that is worrisome. If you have breathing symptoms that surprise you, that's worrisome. All of a sudden you turn blue and you have no idea why. I can't believe that I passed out and the EMS had to come and give rescue breaths or do resuscitation. That's surprising and scary. When the medications you're on now are not working to control everyday symptoms, and when you think that there's something causing your asthma to be badly controlled, that's when you could use the help of a pulmonologist or an allergist or even a primary care doctor to try and talk about what are the exposures that you haven't thought of and what can we do to help make your breathing a little bit easier. That's it. I haven't been paying attention to the chat though.
No, that was perfect. Thank you so much. That was really great information. So I'm gonna open it up for discussion before we transition. And I just wanted to share my slides for a minute because I have a couple of questions for you. Um, Yeah, so while we wait for people to get started in the chat, in your opinion, what are some effective ways to raise awareness about the environmental factors specifically contributing to pediatric asthma disparities and just advocate for change in general?
I think any action is significant, right? No matter how small, from driving less or trying to make a little bit less air quality pollution in your daily life, recycling, to being politically active and supporting local efforts to reduce truck traffic on the way to school or altering the routes. Find like-minded individuals. It's really important for people who are passionate about this to stick together. I noticed this girl in this picture does not have a spacer. What's up with that? Come on, girl. Um,
I
we
didn't
need to
even know
work
about it. See, I
to
gotta change my pictures.
having people meet together is really important because it's an uphill battle. And the more people who believe in this, the better it is. The more energy the people who won't take no for an answer will have. Having meetings like this, but making asthma not a day, not a month, but a whole year, right?
Yeah.
Asthma decade. I don't know.
Yes, yes, until it's over, you know? Yes. So I guess you answered this question a little, but healthcare providers specifically, in what ways do you think they can like do, I guess, a better, not even a better job, but how do we bridge the gap between like environmental justice issues and then people, going to their doctor on a daily basis? How do we bring those two like I guess sectors together to more accurately or more effectively address asthma disparities?
I think that most of it, the clinicians, like the doctors, the nurse practitioners, nurses, anybody who's in a medical setting has a lot of experience in seeing many people who have been dealing with the same problem. And I think they can give that perspective of this is what it's like for a number of people, right? To get that kind of summary. They've got, science they can throw at the problem. They've got a way that to think about the problem, like statistics and the way that kind of people perceive how asthma is a burden or changing. Um, I think it helps deliver consistent messaging also, I think involving healthcare providers in EJ work, but also kind of organizing, right? Uh, I have gone to plenty of protests in front of Jersey Transit to help lend my voice. I think that uh, people who are passionate are passionate. People who have the backing behind them from credentials or from years of experience also get that kind of word. Kim's been in the game for a long time, right? When she says we need to have an asthma event, we're going to have an asthma event.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I see a question in the chat. How does asthma medications affect blood sugar?
Most asthma medications that you take to control your asthma shouldn't cause an elevation in blood sugar purely because when you inhale a medication as a controller, it gets mainly used in the lungs. So it doesn't get a chance to get absorbed into your blood and kind of go around and affect your blood sugar. On the other side, if you have really badly controlled asthma and you get prednisone regularly, now that prednisone, which you drink, is going to impact you and will cause an elevation in your blood sugar because prednisone is going to cause an insulin response. It's also going to weaken your bones, increase your reflux, cause appetite swings, mood swings. It causes a whole lot of trouble. So when you consider how much bad can occur if you don't have good control of your asthma, in addition to coughing and wheezing when you walk up the flight of stairs to your house, and coughing for weeks on end when you're sick, you also have an increased risk of getting these really bad medications, which can impact you. Prednisone, obviously, in this case, you have to use to save your life, right? But I would prefer if it didn't happen all the time.
Okay, X, I think there's a couple more comments in the chat if you wanted to talk about those, and then maybe we can shift to the next part of the presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Savary.
Yes. Just two more questions or one question and a comment. So Erica, who's actually from Parents Engaging Parents. Hi, Erica. She put in the chat, spacers always thought that they were for children only because the doctors didn't give to my children past 5 years old. What do you think
Yeah,
about?
there's been a lot of I've heard that a lot. There are many people with many opinions, right? There are some pediatricians who tell you you don't need to use it. The insert for the FDA approval on some of the medications say you don't need to use a chamber. The pharmacist might say you don't need to use a chamber. I would challenge you to find a pediatric pulmonologist who says you don't need a chamber. I personally still use my chamber because I want 100% of my medicine in my lungs. How much of that medicine do you need when you're having an exacerbation or an asthma attack? Is it 100%? Is it 80%? You know, when you swallow 2 Advils, you believe that they're both in there, right? You don't just like take 2 and hope that one of them gets you. So you want to make sure you dose it correctly. And this is the best way that I know to administer these medications. Same idea with nebulizers, right? People think, oh, kids are going to sit down for the nebulizer, so it's easy to kind of give a nebulizer. But if you think about it, you breathe in for 1 second, you breathe out for 2 seconds. Those 2 seconds you're not breathing are still medicine, right? So you're getting 1/3 of it. Now you're just like, well, why am I getting less of the medicine that I was trying to get? It's all because of the way that we administer it.
Right. That makes sense. And we have a hand raised. Janice, did you want to come off mute?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Dr. Savary. How are you? So I'm asthmatic, and I did not become asthmatic until the age of 28. And so I noticed that I used to be able to endure, like to some point cigarettes, and that. But now I live in a building that even though it's a smoke-free building, it seems like people are not listening to the smoke-free signs. So there is a lot of, and I'm not the only one that complain about the smoke, and then, you have the cigarette smoking and the marijuana, smoking. And now, you have the hookah. And the hookah also, the vapor is not good for asthmatic either. So I just want people to understand that if you are a smoker or you have a child that lives in that household, with a smoker and is asthmatic, you're really doing more harm than you realize. But at the end of the day, we have to understand that asthma is what Dr. Savary said, using your inhaler. I find that I need my inhaler more when I'm coming and living in my own home than when I'm outside because of, my next door neighbor constantly smoking cigarettes or weed or so. But now I was troublesome. My doctor has given me a rescue inhaler, which is the albuterol. And I really don't want to get to that point where I have to, to ever have to take that. So it's kind of scary for me, and it brings high levels of anxiety. So is that the only type of inhaler? And I know it might sound like a crazy question, but is that the only type of inhaler, the albuterol, because that has the steroids in it that would probably subside your attack if it gets to a point where you need that?
So I think you've got a couple points in there. I'm so sorry that you live in a place that makes you a little bit worried and makes your health not as healthy as it could be. Personally, reducing your exposure, both without smoking within your own home, having an air purifier, a way to improve the ventilation, help reduce how concentrated these particles are. Last year, I told a lot of my patients to make what I call the Brick City air filter, right? So you get like a box fan and you go to Home Depot and get one of those AC filters and you just tape it on the back. And now you've got yourself a HEPA air purifier. It doesn't cost nearly as much, but it's functional, right? You want to improve that air quality as much as you can.
And I do have air filters, but sometimes I find myself,
the how good they are, right? Like you want to make sure you get the right kind of HEPA MERV 17, MERV 13 air purifiers. not all purifiers are made the same way. You also mentioned that you don't want to use albuterol. I don't want you to be afraid of using albuterol. Albuterol is a rescue medication. If you need to use albuterol and you have access to it and you don't use it and you have a really negative outcome, that would be a terrible event. You mentioned that albuterol may have had steroids. Albuterol at itself does not have a steroid inside of it. It is a medication which is made to relax muscles and does not impact the lungs in the way of inhaled steroids. There are combination medications which are out there, but if you're talking about purely albuterol, there's no steroid inside of it.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you. And we have to move on pretty quickly because we're getting to the end of the night, unfortunately. This was great. Thank you so much, Dr. Savary. And my last question, what advice would you give to communities seeking to address the environmental justice issues? For example, like people not respecting the smoking policy, et cetera, and just larger scale issues impacting pediatric asthma prevalence and management.
You've got to learn about your risks. You know, if you've got a lot of smokers in your building in a non-smoking building, not only is it like penalizing and letting all the smokers know, hey, we're after you, but maybe it's making a designated smoke area where you recognize that they are going to smoke and make it a safer way. That way it improves your air quality and still allows for their choice. If your community is a site of a former polluter, maybe a Superfund site, is your community in the path of a high traffic zone? What can you do to help make that traffic a little bit lighter? Maybe by redirecting some traffic from residential streets, right? We've done this in a car or, you know, some method of commuting. They'll take you down some side streets that you have no business driving down. You're just like, I thought this was a community and you should not have been there, but Google sent you there or Waze sent you there, right? So trying to help redirect some of that traffic can be something you can do as a policy to speak with the mayor or local council. Seek out organizations which are tasked with taking up these questions. They're looking for work and you're looking for answers, right? Everyone, email X. She wants this trouble.
I do. I really do. And that's what I'm here for, you know, the agitator and all of this, making sure that these issues get addressed by the people who, one, started them, but also two, have the obligation to fix them. And that's our government. And that's also the facilities that are here that deliberately place themselves in the middle of Black and Brown communities.
See, she's heated.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Savary. I want to hand it over to Kim, Ms. Kim Gaddy, the National Director for Clean Water Action, the Environmental Justice Director, just to speak a little bit about her experience with environmental justice and how she got into this work. So Kim, take it away.
Well, thank you, Dr. Savary. You know, Clean Water Action, we have been doing World Asthma Day events this is our third year. World Asthma Day started in 1998. And, you know, we all know that we do this. We want to empower residents through education so they could begin to make the best decisions for their families. And you know, you hit on two crucial things. And just like Erica said in the chat, I unfortunately had 3 children who had asthma. I lost my oldest son to a heart attack, premature heart attack at 32. And spacers, they told me after they reached 5, just like Erica said, or 6, that I didn't need it anymore for my children. My daughter, you know, because you said comfortable, we were so comfortable because I managed my children's asthma so well that when she went off to college, at Ithaca and the cold weather, the first day of class, they had to rush my daughter to the hospital. She had an asthma attack. Didn't even know she was having one because I had protected her so well. You know, she had an asthma management plan. She had never had an asthma attack since she was like 4 or 5. And she didn't even know. But one teacher saw what she was experiencing. And I thank that teacher, that college professor, so wholeheartedly. And so that comfortability, we get comfortable in this. And this is a serious disease and ailment that our children are suffering from just because of the zip code we live in. And so I'm just so grateful because you hit on some key issues. And I think, X, that we need to continue to, just like Dr. Savary said, let's not make it a yearly event. Let's have some real conversations, monthly or quarterly, so we could be coming up with real solutions, because nobody should die of asthma in 2024. I have lost too many relatives to it. My story, living in Newark as a fourth generation Newarker, I lost a brother-in-law to an asthma attack on Vass Avenue. I lost a cousin in the emergency room at Newark Beth Israel Hospital, and they couldn't save him. So this is something that, because it's not televised like all the shootings and crimes that you see, we're still losing young children and adults, through this disease. And so, I don't like to tell this story, but it's a part of who I am. And this story is like almost normalized in our communities because of the pollution, all of the trucks, the poor air, right? So we are trying, and I think I thank Janice as well with Clinton Hill Community Action. We want to make sure that our homes, our schools, and our communities are free of these elements that are impacting our children's health. And so I just want to thank you. I knew you was going to be a fantastic presenter with all the work that you're doing. And I'm looking forward to making sure we continue this conversation and this work, because the only way we're going to change it if we put some serious faces out there to the media, serious campaigns, in people's faces, that this is what we need to do, and then come up with the right kind of policies to make people do right by the residents of New Jersey, the residents of Newark, and then this entire world. So I'm going to stop there because I know we have some other presentations, but Dr. Savary, thank you, my brother, for a job well done. And I'm so looking forward to us to continue this work in this space. X?
Yes, thank you so much, Kim. I learn more and more about you every time you speak at these things. It's crazy, but thank you so much. I know your experience is, the reason why you started the Southwood Environmental Alliance, and just making sure that, the next generation of Norkers with the Youth Council, et cetera, don't have to experience the same problems we have. And that's great. I presented at Rise Academy Charter School, and, just a simple poll question. I'm like, who in here has asthma? Half the class raised their hand, right? Or who knows somebody who has asthma? The whole class raised their hand, right? And these are the types of experiences that are normalized in our community, which we're trying to change, PowerPoint webinar at a time. So now I want to hand it over to our lovely zero emissions and warehouse organizer, Talani Taylor, to talk a little bit about an action that you can take that will either directly or indirectly affect the health of the people in these communities throughout New Jersey. So Talani, could you please explain your warehouse petition?
Yes, so thank you, X. Hey everyone, my name is Talani Taylor. I work as the Zero Emissions and Warehouse Organizer for Clean Water Action. And in honor of World Asthma Day, I did want to share this call to action, which is a petition that you all can sign here. So I'll just give some background info. So currently, right now, here in New Jersey, we have approximately over 1,700 warehouses and distribution centers. And, they all serve as important pieces and hubs in our goods movement and commerce. So, however, the problem, with these facilities, it's the placement, where it's placed, which unfortunately it does affect low income, environmental justice, and overburdened communities with negative environmental and health impacts. So if you can see, I know you can't really see that well, but in the map here in the presentation, that represents all of the existing warehouses in New Jersey, all the little dots in New Jersey. So along with noise pollution, traffic congestion, and just, a disruption of natural habitats, warehouses also increased air pollution. And this is due to the many diesel trucks that are used, right, to move from warehouse to warehouse, from our ports to businesses, distributing all of this, all of these goods and merchandise. And, these impacts not only degrade the quality of life in communities that live nearby, but they can also exacerbate health issues like asthma. For instance, uh, important statistic to know is that across the New York and New Jersey metro region, you can kind of see a little bit in the map, around 20% of all childhood asthma cases are attributable to air pollution. But in neighborhoods with the most traffic-related pollution, like Newark, for example, that can be up to 30%, which is a really big percentage. So currently, right now, warehouses are not included as a specific category on the NJDEP map. And this tool is specifically designed to identify areas in New Jersey that are disproportionately burdened by environmental hazards and stressors. So, it's our hope with this petition, not only to encourage the DEP to include it on the map, but to also make really significant steps towards making information more accessible to environmental justice and overburdened communities who are already, being impacted by existing and also proposed warehouse development in their communities. And being transparent and allowing more access to that information would just further empower those communities and also hold the warehouse developers, right, those that are coming into these communities and building, and hold them accountable, in their business operations. If you go to the next slide, you can scan the QR code with your phone. And I can also post the link in the chat as well to sign and just share with your networks. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Talani. Yes, I would highly recommend you guys look into the environmental justice map tool that the Department of Environmental Protection put out. You can see all the major sources of air pollution and minor sources of air pollution in your area, and just, across New Jersey in general. And when you look at that stuff, you can see that there are obvious zones where pollution, where public health disparities, etc., exist the most, and those are in the communities that are called environmental justice communities: disproportionately Black and Brown, disproportionately low income, and disproportionately speaking a language that isn't English. Those are the three definitions that fall under the DEP's, umbrella of overburdened communities. So yes, this is our petition. Feel free to scan. It will also be in the chat. But other than that, as Kim says, I can give you your 3 minutes back, if you have no other questions. Thank you guys again for joining this presentation. Thank you, Dr. Savary. Thank you, Kim and Talani, for your excellent presentations of the issue. I really appreciate, learning the medical side of asthma. I learned a lot about the social issues and what causes it in the air, but learning how to educate the community on what they can do to stop it is really important. And I see a couple notifications in the chat, but I can't read them right now. Cassie, is there anything to note?
I think they're all just thank yous to the presenters. And like everyone else said, great job, X, great job, Kim, great job, Dr. Savary and Talani. Thank you so much for presenting tonight. Just while we have a couple minutes, does anyone have any comments, questions before we wrap up? Feel free to unmute if you have something to say.
Thank you all for coming. I know it's giving up part of your night, but it's a great great work that the Clean Water Action team is doing, and Dr. Savary, who's dedicated his life to this work. Really appreciate having voices joining us and us able to join you in advocating for asthma prevention every day, not just on World Asthma Day. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, it's great having community events and also having organizations which help represent our community's needs. I think one of the weirdest statistics I know about Newark is that it is one of the most heavily resourced, underutilized cities, right? We've got resources for everything. I can get you an air conditioner tomorrow, but you got to figure out who do you ask, right? We have a lot of resources, a lot of organizations which are out there. I think part of it is creating the organization. Another part is kind of combining them and using them as a force. And that's kind of what I want to try and do, is to try and kind of connect some people to make these changes a little bit more sustainable, a little bit larger scope, not only for the South Ward, for Newark, or for Essex County, right? But for New Jersey, or, you know, could be the United States or the world. You know, it all depends. And that's kind of like the next level of our action, right? To be able to get, you know, the DEP to include warehouses on its tool, but then to also make sure that the regulations are ironclad and followed, to make sure that not only we're looking at places that are currently being developed, but also places that have already been developed, and what can we do to help remediate some of those exposures.
Sounds like a plan.
And thank you. We're here to support you like you're supporting us, Dr. Savary. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, X, and everyone
Bye.
else.